Welcome to GV247.tv, the Global Vision Channel, a non-profit web TV channel bringing biblical perspective to the world in which you live.
Hello and welcome to GV247.tv, the Global Vision Channel. My name is Deborah, and as I've been saying the last couple of weeks, my husband Stewart is busy in the studio working on a new documentary. Now, as I've said before, also, we're doing something a little bit different over these few weeks. As many of you no longer go to traditional church because of wrong teaching, or you're experiencing what we call apostasy, part of the great falling away that is in Bible prophecy, many are coming out of the traditional churches and meeting in house groups. They are known sometimes as the remnant, Bible-believing Christians who don't want to compromise what the Bible teaches. And church has now gone full circle and reverted back to what it was originally, the ekklesia in Greek, the called out ones who meet together to study in one another's houses. They worship, have good fellowship, which is more easily facilitated because house church contains smaller groups. So you get a chance to get to know each other better. So we are interviewing some believers who are willing to share their journey with you, share their faith, so you can see how we do it, hear what God has done in their lives, and hopefully be encouraged. And I have with me today, here's Jonny. Hello, Jonny Kane, back with us again. Jonny has already done some lovely programmes for us on the channel. So, Jonny. First of all, could you just give us an idea about your background? Did you have any faith? Were you brought up in the church? What exactly is your story?
Well, to those who aren't able to tell from my accent, I'm from Northern Ireland, and Northern Ireland has had a very rich heritage with Christianity, obviously with the Catholic and Protestant divide, which you're familiar with, and most of the UK. I was in an area which was heavily Brethren, Presbyterian, Methodists, and so it was a very rich kind of New Old Testament Bible believing community. My mum come from a Brethren home, and at the beginning we actually grew up, I say we, my siblings and I, we grew up in a Brethren background, but sadly things happened in the family, and that kind of fell by the wayside. But just before that, we kind of moved from Brethren into what you would call maybe the Pentecostal church in Northern Ireland. It was quite new to the area. CFC probably being the most prominent church or well-known church in Northern Ireland. So we were part of that. So from the age of 10 right up to maybe 18, I believed I was a Christian. But that belief to what I know now was quite scary.
Right. So what happened? You went the way of all flesh, as most of us did. Did you kind of lose your faith, or did you still believe in God and you were playing at it, or what was the story behind that?
Do you know, it's a really interesting question, Deborah, you've asked, because for years I've tried to answer that question, but only now, really looking back, have I been able to understand really what was going on. And probably what was going on was that there was not clear instruction to what a true Christian believer looked like, followed, walked like, did, spoke, all these things, because in Northern Ireland, with it being a rich heritage, legalism was the prominent theme within church. So it wasn't about your actual faith with the Lord, but it was about how you looked, how you dressed, what you said, and how you conducted yourself was how you were merited as a Christian and how it was based. And so it was very outward judgmental, especially where I was, it was very judgmental. And so growing up, as long as I ticked all the boxes of what I thought or what the kind of portrayal was of a Christian, then in my head it was fine. And as long as I maybe said a few prayers, read my Bible here and there, went to a few things, then that was it. That was enough.
And when did you realise it wasn't?
Probably when I tried to commit suicide when I was 19. A whole load of things had, it's just too long for today, but a whole load of things had culminated up until I was 19, and I really was enough. I was fed up with life, fed up with doing what I was doing, and I was bored, and I was just lost, really lost. And so I tried to commit suicide, and I said a little prayer beforehand, and I was like, I'm coming home, I don't want to be in this world anymore, and I just want you to take me. And so I'm driving my car over 100 mile an hour and I spin it out. And in this split second, it was split seconds, I had this, not out of body experience, but I had an experience in which my whole life flashed before me. And it was really vivid in that I couldn't see anything, but it was just white. And this voice said, "You think you're coming home and you're not. Where am I in your life? Let's look at your life. You say you're a Christian. Let's evaluate that." And he's like, the voice said, "You don't know me. You know, you claim to know me, but you don't know me, and you're not coming to heaven."
Wow.
And I woke up, and my car was a complete mess. There was a tree in my driver's side, or passenger side seat, and I'd missed the tree by a few inches. All windows were done in. An ambulance came on the scene quite quickly, and I had not broken a bone, not a bruise, not a scratch. And the lady actually driving towards when I spun out says, "I thought you were going to be dead." And the paramedics thought I was going to be dead too. So that's when it began for me that there was a wake-up call. What was I believing? What had I been believing? And whatever it was wasn't true, wasn't real. And I need to get my stuff together. And that's when the questions started to come in. And that was 20.
So you've had a bit of a journey, Jonny. You ended up finally in Scotland. So what kind of church were you going to there?
Yeah, so moved to another church, non-denominational, other spectrum from where I was going, and I was there for about 6 years.
And what was your walk like? Were you, just be honest, were you being discipled?
Got heavily involved with church, so I was maybe attending three times a week, especially on a Sunday. You maybe go twice. I was doing Bible study. I was doing all the other things that you would naturally do, and for me, that was what a Christian was. As long as I hung about with Christians, I didn't drink, I didn't smoke, I didn't swear, I didn't do all these things, then for me it was right. Bible study, prayer meetings, that was another thing for me, was a merit of what a Christian was. And obviously having a relationship with God, and that was what it was like even when I came to Scotland. Scotland's a bit different in that all the constraints that were around me, all the parameters around me in Northern Ireland, all the peer pressure, all the judgmental eyes, that was all gone.
Yeah.
And so to speak, I was free. And so I started to experiment. I started to kind of just do my own thing within the realms of Christianity and just explore what my faith meant to me, what it was about. And when you ask that question about, be honest, honestly, I made a profession, but I still was no wiser to before committing suicide, when I clearly didn't have a faith of the Lord. Even after, it was still the same. Because although I had a relationship with the Lord, there was no direction. And I was still floundering about. I was still asking myself, is this it? Is this what church is? Because it was very big, going from a very small church in Northern Ireland to then going to a very cosmopolitan church where you have different races, different languages, all coming together, maybe about, on a Sunday, 300 to 400 people. And you just felt lost.
Yeah.
There was no community, there was no sense of anything. And if anything, it was about serving. Serving was the main thing that was promoted on a Sunday morning. Are you gonna be a steward? Are you going to be in the catering team? Are you going to, creche, whatever it was? And it was like, this is what now a Christian meant. You make a profession, you do the things, and then you become part of the team, and that's it.
Now, you were heavily into music at that time.
Yes.
And I think you did some mixing and DJing and so on, which you probably need to explain first of all quickly what that is.
So my background is carpentry, but in 2007, 2008, the crash happened, and at that time I'd been dabbling in DJing, so that's taking two sets of music and mixing them together. I did it in a club circuit, so all the kind of commercial clubs in Northern Ireland, I then went to London and to study music in Pink Floyd's recording studio for a year and a half. And then from there, I moved up to Scotland and was a prominent DJ on the Edinburgh scene for about 4 years. And I thought that being a Christian, I could have an influence in an industry which was heavily saturated with demonic activity, with drugs, drinking, and all the rest that goes with it. And I thought by me being there and by me controlling the main thing which attracted people, which was music, that I could at least have an influence. And I did. I led one person to Christ, and it was a bouncer, but I had no influence on that scene, and I was deluded.
Now, you are married.
I am.
You're married to Hannah, and you have a most delightful baby daughter, Soraya.
I do.
So how did that all come about?
So, in brief, I'm a people watcher. I love looking at people, and I glean a lot of information, good and bad, from it. But one of the things I picked up when I was at church was that church still acted like the world. Because remember, I was in the club scene, I did all that, and I knew what they got up to. And so I expected different standards to be in Christian church. It wasn't. If not, it was worse. It's exactly the same. The only thing they weren't doing was having sexual encounters, but they were doing everything else, which is wrong. And for me, I quickly realised that if the Lord is going to give me a wife, then first thing I need to understand is, who am I? Yeah. That's the first thing I understand. Who is Jonny Kane? From there, what is it I'm looking for? Because all my friends are just dating other girls in the church, doing the circuit, and they're getting fed up after a few months, a few years. And for me, that was a waste of time, a waste of emotional time. And if I met my wife, I wanted her to get a full 100% of me, not 10%, because the other 90 had been given to other girls. So I've been so coarse with that, but that's the reality to me.
Yeah.
And I thought I did actually meet my potential wife before I went to London. And she wasn't to be. And actually, the Lord spoke to her because I was reading the signals wrong as a guy. I was getting all the wrong signals. And I was making this amazing thing in my head, which wasn't. And she had given me a lift to a Christian retreat, which was 2 hours, and she was giving me a lift back. And so we have this awkward conversation before we go back that she wasn't going to date me and there's not going to happen. And I was crushed, absolutely devastated. And I cried out to the Lord, and I was like, what was that all about? What was that about? Because I've been celibate, I've been patient. What's that? And he just spoke to me clearly, and he says, what is it that you liked about this girl? And I named all the things the qualities that I liked. And he said, great, write it down and write your future wife a letter that you've been waiting for her. And what is it? How do you want to meet her? And I said, well, I don't want me to be involved. I don't want me to have to question whether this is my wife. I want you to bring to me my wife, and there to be no debate, to be no question at all. This is my wife. And so that I know that you're leading me, and that I don't have to do all my mates are doing, which is to, play about. And 3 years went by, and my sister was getting fed up as she had a kid and was settled down, and she wanted to have cousins for her kids, and she wanted her brother to be married because her brother had not had a girlfriend ever. I'd never had a girlfriend. And so she was trying to set me up left, right and centre, and she realised that actually if she was going to get me set up, I had to be a Christian girl. And so for about 6 months she tried to set me up with Hannah, and I was having none of it. And likewise, Hannah's friend, which we had a mutual friend involved, was trying to set her up with me, and she was having none of it because we were content. We believed the Lord would bring the right person, and when the right time came along, the right person, then that would be it. And for me, it was contentment. It was being content in the Lord and not running after these things. Yeah. And so then one day, my sister had conjured up this whole thing, and I met Hannah, and we're sitting in the living room, and I look over it, and I go, oh goodness, you're my wife. in my head. I'm looking at her, and she looks up, and so I make an excuse to leave. And at that time, I was always going to the beach because we live near a beach. And I would pray, and I would just communicate with the Lord. And I said to the Lord, I think I've met my wife. But I'm really nervous because surely this can't be, And then he reminded me of my prayer. And he says, test it. Give it a year. test it, and if you still don't know after a year that this is your wife, well, then end it off amicably. But be honest and upfront with her at the beginning that you're not going to play games, that you're not doing this like the world, that you want to court her and they want to be accountability and they want to be things in parameters in place so that it's done right. And that's what we did. We did Bible study, we met with friends, we got to know one another. And a year came up and I proposed to her because I knew that Hannah was my wife. And such as our marriage being, you know, the Lord is continually giving us the next milestone to go to, but we're constantly laying it before Him.
Maria had been talking to us last week about going to a kind of a Hillsong type church where there was it was party time all the time. So you were in a church like that, and then you ended up in a little church like this.
Yeah. So
how did it happen?
Well,
and is it an improvement? I mean, because or are you bored stupid being with us lot?
Okay. So how it happened was through a series of events. Jarvie was included in that, and there was a wee film done, the Daniel Connection, and Jarvie had asked me, "Do you want to be an extra in a film?" And I was like, "Of course I do."
Well, actually, you know what? Let's just, before you go on, let's just have a wee look at your debut.
Oh, let's do it.
This is Jonny Kane running for his life. Well, there you go, Jonny.
Look at the hair.
Yeah, look at the hair. You had hair.
Do you know, I kept that just for the movie for a year.
I know. Listen, we had one guy having to wear a beard for a year. But the thing with Jonny is that now he's a papa. We're all having great fun at his expense, saying, "Jonny, where's your bouffant hair, dude?" He's going, "Oh, I've no time to do my hair." See, God moves in mysterious ways. So anyway,
movie came along, and long story cut short, that was the introduction to yourselves. And at the time, Jarvie was doing a Bible study with Stewart and on this eschatology. And he was like, "Jonah Jonas," and I was like, "No, I want nothing to do with that because I grew up with that in Northern Ireland and it's just Jesus. That's what it's all about. Just Jesus. I don't need to know pre-A or post-millennialism. I don't need to know the rapture. Just Jesus. That's it." And he's like, "Fine." And then slowly but surely, he would come back and when he'd give me a series of events of what he'd been learning. I was like, "This is actually really interesting." I was like, "Actually, I do want to meet with this guy." And so we met, and I then had a job which took me away from home. And for about a year and a half, I stopped doing the Bible study with Stewart and Jarvie. And I had a life crisis. I was going to this church, which I was rarely attending because of the job and the commitments and all these things. And I called out to the Lord. And I was like, "Lord, I need help. The suicidal thoughts are coming back. My marriage is not great. I'm working from home, away from home, and things are not working well. And I just miss my brothers. I miss the fellowship I was having." And it was another voice, "Ring Stewart." And I remember where I was on the high street in Dunfermline, and he was like, "Ring Stewart." And so I phoned Stewart, not thinking he would pick up. And I had all these ideas that, you know, this guy hasn't spoken to me a year and a half, I'm not speaking to him. And Stewart was like, "Come round, let's have a chat, and let's see what's going on." And so quickly Stewart was able to see what the issues were in my life. And we sat, and he was real with me, and he said, "Look, I'm not going to muck you about because I'm a busy guy and you're a busy guy, and I'm just going to be blunt and straight with you. We can end this conversation today amicably and we can just, you know, go our separate ways, or we can do life together. Clearly you want to know who God is. Clearly you have a problem understanding what that is, and we've got a bit of work to do because you've got a lot of different doctrines mishmashed all together and different ideas that I can clearly see, and you lack discipline. And so all these things put together make it very difficult for you to understand who God is. So what I'm proposing to you is we could do a thing called discipleship. And I was like, what's discipleship? And he's like, well, I'm not making it up. Look, let's look to the Word. Let's look to the Bible. What does the Bible define discipleship? And so we looked at that, defined it. And after he says, take a time, pray about it, and come back to me and let me know what your thoughts are. I knew what my thoughts were, but I did that, came back a few days later and said, look, I need to get my life together. You know what's going on. Let's just do the discipleship. And so I basically give permission for Stewart to be able to speak into my life and for me to be accountable to him. And thus began our journey into investigating why we're here, what it's all about, who God is, who Jesus is, what is the Bible, how do I read the Bible, and then how do I apply it to my life. And so that was the beginnings, but I still was going to my other church. And eventually, over a period of time, I realised that I really had to make a decision. Either I serve the Lord with all my heart, and I can make my commitment fully to the church that I'm belonging to, or I don't. Because I can't keep doing the two. I can't keep going to my church, deceiving myself, deceiving all that are around me, whilst attending this. It just wasn't going to work. And so that was the break. My wife and I, we made a decision. We believed the Lord, give us the time. We spoke with the pastoral team. We explained to them what the problems were. They were amicable, but raised concerns. We raised our concerns likewise. It wasn't taken. It said we were exaggerating what was being said, what we've been seeing. And for us, we knew that right there and then, it was the right thing that we were doing. We weren't going to make a scene. We weren't going to try and make converts to pull them out. We just wanted to leave quietly, and we wanted to leave with dignity and amicably with the church. And that was our journey with this little small church.
And I remember being very impressed by the fact that, Hannah already had made commitments to do certain things with the church, and that she didn't want to leave there and come here until she'd fulfilled that. You both did it honourably. So certainly nobody in our church told you to leave.
No.
We're an unusual church in as much as everybody else wants to grow numbers, and we're saying, Lord, just please keep it really small, because we only want people that you have brought here.
Absolutely.
So the difference between the big church, I mean, it wasn't a huge church we went to, but it was certainly much bigger than this, and whatever you were being taught, what's it been the major difference between that and coming to this small house church and being discipled? Has it really made a difference to your walk?
Okay. So the first thing is, my question is to you, looking and to yourself, Deborah, is why is it always about the numbers?
Exactly.
Why is it always about, you've got a membership of 20, 30, 100? You remember I tell my friends when I left the church, and they said, how many people are in your church? I was like, what's that got to do with my church? How's that relevant? You meet in a house? Oh, that's not a church. And so for me, I knew I was doing the right thing because the heart was wrong. The difference with this church and the other church is that this church, its commitment is solely about the individual person. It's not about the whole, although that comes into it. It's about meeting the needs of the individual person. So Stewart would take time aside to personally meet with me, even though he had a very, very busy, chaotic business life. In the midst of all this, he personally made his time to see every single man in the church. Likewise, he made all the time to see all the women. And you would do one-on-one ministry with us. And what that meant was, it was looking at who we are, what it's about, how we read the Bible, who is Jesus, who is God, and that then being applied, outworked in our lives. And ultimately, it then comes back to the church. Because what I was finding was that there was this close-knit working of unity. All the brothers and sisters in the church, we all loved one another. It was there.
Past tense.
Love.
We love one another.
We love one another. It's just, I can't explain it. That verse comes to mind where it says, "And the Lord looks down those who can meet in unity. It's like the oil running down the beard of Aaron's beard." And that for me was how I would summarise our church, because we would meet, and I would always know that whatever I was going through, there'd be a brother or sister sitting there who'd be going through exactly the same thing, but they maybe had a different slant on it. They were maybe a wee bit further along than me, or I was a bit further along than them. and we're able to encourage. And for me, that is what church is. It's doing life together, meeting together, being able to pray, worship, hear the Lord's voice, not trying to conjure up any kind of mystical thing or feeling or music. It was purely putting the world out and just saying, Lord, what is it you want to say today? That's it.
That's it. Jonny, we're well run out of time, but thank you very, very much. You know, I'd probably love to have you back in the studio again and we can talk some more. But that's it, folks. We're running really tight for time. So I just want to thank Jonny Kane again in our church. And it's been so precious for Stewart and I seeing these sheep grow. Some came as little puppies, all, really excitable and all the rest of it. But you've grown into a sheep. There you go, the missing link. But it's been such a joy for us and seeing the work that God is doing in the lives of these dear souls. So, just very quickly, don't forget, every Monday, Lamplight Fellowship Study Meeting, and still on the subject of the Lord Jesus Christ. And next week we'll have another guest with us from our church. We're talking about their faith and their journey. We hope that these stories will encourage you. Remember your GV24/7 cards, or you can get the artwork so you can have somebody else print them out for you. And please remember, thank you for all your encouragement, your stories, especially with what we're going through at the moment. Our sole aim is to encourage you to follow the Lord Jesus Christ and Him alone. Until next week, thank you again. God bless.
This is GV247.tv, bringing biblical perspective to the world in which you live. A powerful free resource with hundreds of short films on a wide range of Bible topics from experts around the world, plus full-length sermons and programs for teaching and encouragement. Choose from current affairs, signs of the times, a chance to voice your own opinion, and special offers on our full-length feature films, documentaries, and study materials. At over 4 hours in length, the Lamplight Project is a systematic 12-part Bible study series, a powerful teaching tool that begins with the origins of life and takes the viewer on a comprehensive journey packed with high-profile interviews, film, graphics, and illustrations, concluding with the return of Christ and an encouragement to stand firm and be faithful. Complete with a free study guide download for both personal and group study, this powerful interactive guide connects to over 1,000 programs with expert interviews on GV247.tv, our free service web TV channel. Does My Life Have Meaning? A powerful 1-hour presentation produced from the Lamplight Project. With a free copy of the Gospel of Luke, this film is crammed with engaging interviews, film and graphics. A life-challenging film to those searching for answers. As distributors for the Jesus film, we offer this timeless movie based on Luke's Gospel. This clear presentation of the life of Jesus Christ has been viewed worldwide and translated into over 1,200 languages. We provide the film with a free copy of the Gospel of Luke. The Daniel Project is a popular TV documentary that presents an overview of Bible prophecy and an encouragement to read the signs of the times. Hailed as one of the best TV films to be made on the subject, DVD extras feature a heart-to-heart interview about the way of rescue. Based loosely on the documentary, The Daniel Connection is a full-length feature film. This fictional thriller incorporates many of the themes promoted through pop culture and social media which affect people on a global scale. Launched at the Cannes Film Festival, The Daniel Connection points the ever-skeptical viewer to search the Bible for answers to life's deepest questions. We've been serving the body of Christ for over 30 years, and if you would like further information, please do not hesitate to get in touch.